Hey everybody, welcome to My Hero Academia chapter 385. I feel like I messed that up. Anyway, hey everyone, welcome. I realized I didn't do chapter 384, so apologies. I did it on stream, but like I was like last week, very rough for me. Week before that, very rough for me. We're here now though. We're gonna do chapter 385. It's gonna be a fun time. It's a fun chapter, I think. I think there's some good little moments in there. There's one thing that I'm absolutely in love with, and there's one thing that I'm absolutely curious about that we will go through. It has to do with the translations because I find that something weird's going on there, and it kind of muddies up what exactly is going on in the pages because I don't know which translation to read because they're so different. Very rare that happens. Anyway, yeah, guys. Hey, welcome. Now, where do I want to start? You know, I realized that we really haven't done My Simp Academia in a while. It's been kind of just neutral, just with the analysis, and I realized, like, honestly, you know, we probably do better when you guys hate me or when there's like significant opposition. So I really think I gotta make this more entertaining for you all. I gotta like really step up my game here. As we're getting to the end of Hero Academia, like I gotta like milk Hero Academia for as much as it's worth. So My Simp Academia, we are restarting it. We are now My Simp Academia, the All for One years. Um, I think that All for One is an absolutely great villain, probably the best thing to ever happen in Hero Academia. And I'm tired of pretending that isn't the case. So this is from now on going to be the All for One Power Hour because like how can you read this and not see just utter mastery and like utter like greatness of villainy? Like All for One is finally showing us what he's capable of, and that is embracing the teenage mind. It's a Shonen Jump series. Every like obviously this is the master plan from the beginning. In a Shonen Jump series, you're only going to win if you become a teenager and you like think like a teenager. So that's where we are. Dark Impulses, yeah, man. Look how far Tokoyami got. Yeah, man. This was always the master plan. He wanted to hit this really sweet spot, and now that he's hit the sweet spot, he's gonna go and he's gonna wreck it. Like honestly, bro, thinking about it, like if All for One was a Pokemon, people would be thinking like, yeah, this is definitely like top 20 like evolution families because like All for One went from being a zombie potato to a zombie cockroach. That's pretty creative, man. Like he went from like being a ghost grass type to a ghost bug. Really, All for One, great concept. He's really like living up to it. Did you see the designs? All for One, really, he's not here for flashy fights. He's really here because Horikoshi wants to draw a zombie manga. So getting the opportunity to do that, like this guy must be giving Horikoshi so much fun. Like Horikoshi must love him. He must love having a guy that just takes the hits and never goes down. I mean, that's why you would want a zombie like All for One around. And his cockroach-like tendencies? Yeah, man. Now, I know some of you might say, like, well, you know, All for One ain't that great because, like, Endeavor pretty much beat him up. And I would say, like, yeah, you know, Endeavor did beat him up, but Endeavor's flames are also hotter than plasma cannons. Alright? Like, Endeavor's busted. Endeavor is like the sun. Are you really gonna bring All for One down for being beaten by the sun? I wouldn't. That's ridiculous. The sun is the sun. Like Endeavor's like on a whole other level. The man's practically a god at this point, because like he's the only one that can actually wield any kind of temperature that purely obliterates someone. Meanwhile, everyone here is rocking plasma cannons that can't really burn anyone apart. Like yeah, no man. Like no wonder he lost to Endeavor. Endeavor's a god. Really, what we should be appreciating is that he survived that. You know, like it's a war. Whatever works, works, man. Anyway, what I'm ultimately saying is that All for One, top tier villain. This and this chapter really does show it. All for One is 100% top tier villain. Man went from being a zombie potato to being a zombie raccoon, and I think we should really all just respect that. Anyway, that's like the general notes for the chapter. We can get into it like seriously now. We'll put that aside. We'll like keep the All for One propaganda down, and we'll go into well, not the page by page walkthrough. What I actually really want to do first is deal with the translation issue. Okay, I'm fighting a little bit with my computer here to get the screen, but this is the page in question. It's pretty deep in the chapter. Anyway, it's pretty deep in the chapter. It's really interesting. It's not very often that we have such a disagreement between translations, and it happens for quite a bit. So in this page, we have All for One talking about fierce wings, a putrid festering quirk factor. It's to your credit that you got this far using such garbage. And it's like, yeah, man, tell them how it is. Just a bunch of wings. Like, what's so cool about that? Like, Hero Academia is about beating people up with your fists, man. Like, that's like how you win. Like, being able to fly fast is pretty lame. You have now the interesting thing is that when it comes to the fan translation, so the first translations we had, I can't show it on the screen, but the translation was, even with your quirk factor in such a pitiful state, you managed to put up a good fight. Impressive. The tone between these two things, the difference in it is so strange. In the fan translation, like, it talks about the state of the quirk factor as if it's in a really nasty position. When you look at the fan translation, it makes it feel like he's talking more about like Hawks being handicapped. When you look at the English translation, a putrid festering quirk factor, it makes it sound like he's actually talking about it in general instead of like just this moment in time. That this quirk factor is just lame overall from the very beginning and not just because it's been damaged after the Dobby stuff. It's just because like the real critical thing is like in the fan translation they say in such a pitiful state, whereas there's nothing about the current state of it in the official translation, instead making it seem like, hey, this has been a pretty lame quirk from the beginning. And even calling putrid and festering. Festering is like, okay, there's like an active problem with it right now. Yeah, that's not the worst one on this page though. If we go down to this next page, or this next portion, let me see if I can find it. This is the weird one. So the quirks you stock work outside your body and don't mesh so well when you're rewinding, huh? Sucks to be you. Alright, you got that, right? In the fan translation and in the spoilers, the man says, even though your body is rewinding, the amount of quirks you have remains unaffected. What a drag. How does one even interpret this world of difference? I don't get it. What is going on here? Because in the fan translation, Hawks is on the receiving end. Like he feels shitty that this ain't working out for him. On the official, Hawks is like pretty much laughing at All for One. Pretty stupid to be laughing at the guy that's surviving a heart wound. He's laughing at All for One because the quirks aren't working that well with All for One's body. And when I look at this line right here, they work outside your body. What does that even mean? The quirks you stock work outside your body. Actually, no, I got it. I just figured it out. This is the benefits of doing this and speaking it through. So this quirks you stock work outside your body. What he's saying is that the rewind isn't affecting the quirks because it's outside of his body. So like that's what he's saying. Okay, actually, you know what? Things are trying to come together here. Even though your body is rewinding, the amount of quirks you have remains unaffected. That's the original. And then you go here, and it's like the quirks you stock work outside your body. So this kind of agrees with that, with the fan translation. But then, don't mesh so well when you're rewinding, huh? And then sucks to be you. Yeah, you know what? Something's finicky here. Something got lost in the translation here. Because this line can make sense if you take the line from the fan translation about the quirks remaining unaffected. If you take that line and you take that for it to be true, this first part right there makes sense. The quirks you stock work outside your body. Yeah, that's the fan translation must have seen something in the translation that made them think they're specifically addressing why those quirks aren't being touched. And maybe the Viz Media translator saw that and saw the spot that justifies that being the quirks are outside the body. That's why rewind can't affect it, because it's only affecting his body. But the continuation here is where we have a problem. Yeah, no, man. I actually think on this one, I think there's some problem with the Viz translation. Especially the what a drag switching to sucks to be you. Yeah, no, man. Like, there is a full-on there is a full-on interpretation problem. For this one, I think it's probably the fan translation that has it correct, and it's a pretty critical little issue that we have here. I do want to say though, at first when I saw the Viz translation, I thought when he said your quirks are like work outside your body, I thought he meant this little thing about how the quirk is appearing outside the body. But now I don't know. I don't know. Guys, let me know what you think about the translation issue. I know we spent a few moments on it, but like again, we don't get these kind of problems very often. And when you have such disagreement with the way that this is being written, you know, it's worth questioning. There's also the possibility that I'm misinterpreting things because English second language, like that always happens. Very possible for that one. Um, yeah, man. Interesting. I think right now, like I'm on the fan translation side on this one, just because like I think even using that idiom, I think having to rely on doesn't mesh well to like try and convey what was going on here. I think that might also speak to the weakness of this particular line in the translation. Oof, oof, that's a rough one. Anyway, that's like one of the big ones I wanted to talk about. Let's go back to see how this all happened, how we got here. Where do we go from now? Okay, so we officially started the chapter with just a nice little map. I really appreciate this. Respect. Love that. We see where everyone's coming from. We also have the east, so they're going towards the east. Okay, sure. Higantomachia, Mount Lady, they came in from one direction. They're all trying to stop All for One. I really love that the author did this little thing just to say that these guys are pretty far away from where Ochako was. Because, like, if they were anywhere near Ochako, the girl dead. Alright? Like, nah, man. Like, she's not going to survive that. Anyway, good to know that the toga doubles are still a thing. So, sure, sure. Kind of hope that they get that problem sorted there. The chapter title is The Impulses of Youth right here, which is just All for One talking about like having to deal with his teenage brain, but it's okay. Like All for One's getting closer and closer to the meta of Hero Academia, which is be a teenager and punch people. I mean, like he didn't get to punch people in this chapter, but he's going to end up doing it at some point. Like you see, like the setup here is that he's talking about, oh man, I'm getting these weird feelings. Like I'm starting to think about things differently. He's 100% gonna have a temper tantrum, and he's 100% going to punch someone in the face because that's what teenagers do. All right, so on, 1 second. Okay, so on this page we see Mount Lady and her little squad there. So this page is just justifying, hey guys, this is what Mount Lady's been doing. She's been using equipment. Yui's been the one throwing it at her, or sorry, Poltergeist has been like sending it up. Yui's been like changing it in terms of its size. I do wonder about the mass because if like Yui's throwing that thing up there, when exactly does that mean that Ray or Emily, whatever her name is, does that mean she's levitating something with a crazy multiplied mass, or is that thing as I'm really just wondering when like Mount Lady moves that thing around, is conservation of mass maintained or is like the mass being increased when Rule adds more? I think mass is being increased. But then that makes me wonder, like this girl can lift a lot. In particular, this girl. This girl's weight limit is like pretty high. Doesn't really matter in the long run, but just worth pointing out. This line is just Horikoshi justifying where Mount Lady keeps getting weapons from. Not a big deal. We have a pretty good shot here. This is just Horikoshi. Horikoshi clearly loves seeing people beat up. That's why All for One is like one of the best things for him because he gets to beat up people. So we get to see that. It looks pretty good. This page is pretty useless. What page is this? Like page 3 or something? It's pretty useless just because it's damage depiction. The most important thing is understanding what exactly is Hawks doing in this situation. He's just helping Tokoyami be his wingman. He's giving some extra speed from what Tokoyami says. Your supports grants light more speed. I don't really understand how exactly baby feathers are giving a shadow creature more speed, unless it's like linked to Tokoyami, but like I don't know. Whatever. Moral support. Tokoyami kind of needs it, and as we see later, like Hawks did his best being a meat shield. All right, team, we move on. So we have like the giant attack, and then we see this giant gut wrencher that comes out from the ground. Now, one thing that you have to appreciate here, All for One has a calling card. He loves ripping people's guts out. And you know why he does that? Because he's a real villain. This guy, he loves seeing people suffer. Like, when he saw All Might dragging his body towards him with his guts spilling out, yes, he felt a lot of fear, but I think it also awakened something in him. I think he really wants to see that again. He wants to see it, and he wants... Well, he dares heroes to like, yo, bro, I'm gonna rip your guts out. I dare you to come towards me with your guts hanging out. And every time they don't, he tells himself, yeah, they aren't All Might. Cause see, like, he really is in a lot of ways All Might's greatest fan. Like, I think All for One really actually likes heroes. because he has like judgment criteria. He talked about how Nana wasn't a worthy inheritor of One for All, which implies that he has some kind of hierarchy. Because like, if how could you judge someone to be not worthy if you don't have a hierarchy, right? You must have some standards. So I think in some way, All for One's always kind of, you know, testing heroes to see if they're like All Might. And, you know, in the off chance that one of those heroes actually drags their entrails towards him as they're trying to kill him, I think he'd be like, oh yeah, you know what? Probably best just to like finish you off there, because otherwise, All for One, he actually doesn't like killing people. He kind of, I get it, you know. He likes maiming people, but like he really just he wants friends. That's what it all comes down to. Like he wants people that will listen to him. He's got abandonment issues. I'm pretty sure. Very complex character. 100% sure. Anyway, you know, all that aside, the most important thing to take away from here is that even under duress, All for One's gonna go for those gut shots. He just did what he did to Best Genius and to All Might to this girl. He just loves gut. Oh, you know what? Bakugo too. Like Bakugo got like a really good gut shot too. So this is just who he is. What you should be looking at here is specifically he did this under duress. Like the man will stick to his style. You gotta appreciate that. Like Undead Raccoon style is unbeatable. Anyway, little detail that you have here that maybe you didn't notice is that while Mount Lady is fallen, we actually see that the ground is ripping apart here. So he did pretty much the Naruto tactic of like going under the ground to like sneak a hit in on Gigantomachia. Personally, I don't think Machia is that smart that you need to do this, but All for One's like he's really making sure he's got the situation under control here. Anyway, we get the giant beam blast. Machia gets a good hit across the body. Of course, he doesn't lose an arm. He just gets put down. What did All for One say about this? Oh yeah, a dog that bites must be put down. Yeah. And now here we see like what Horikoshi really wants to do with All for One, and that is show how much of a zombie he is. This is like some of the most fun Horikoshi's probably had in a while. I just want to say, like, when I see this face of Machia, it really does remind me of Crimson Riot. Just, you know, just putting it out there. I look, man, this week we had Death Arms come back, and that was like one of the spots on my bingo card. Like, I'm still rooting very hard for Machia somehow being Crimson Riot. Don't know how it's gonna work, but I believe in Horikoshi. Anyway, we should get serious and talk about the dialogue here. A dog that bites must be put down. He says that he's just being a tough guy. Like, he actually isn't that big into animal abuse because Machia's still alive. Like, he's just saying that. He's giving Machia a warning. And then he starts talking about, you know, being a teenager. This is my other self's influence, but something dark brews within my core. I found this line very interesting because I'm thinking, like, how? Like, that's you. That your other self is you. Something dark brews within my core. I wonder if in this part he's talking about, like, yo, my other self right now is entangled with Shigaraki, and because of that, I am feeling some hate. So like that hate's coming in, and like it's coming in from like a distance because Shigaraki, like I'm starting to feel young again. It's just there's something dark brews within my core. I have to think, like, this is a weird line. Like, he's right now supposing that this is all happening because of the vestige, which is just strange unless you assume that there is a new element coming into the vestige, which is then going to him. So I have to assume it's something related to Shigaraki's hatred. I think All for One for the first time is like feeling real contempt. That might be like what we're going towards, or what he says is real contempt. Now, I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, All for One is a bit of an edgelord. Okay, I'll admit that. I can admit that because All for One at the end of the day is gonna kill everyone, right? Like, I can admit that, because you know this is what makes a really complex villain. He can be embarrassing, and in some ways that kind of adds insult to injury. Because like imagine being beaten by an edgelord. All right, like Hawks just got beaten by an edgelord. All right, this guy thinks he's a Demon King. This guy, he needs to talk to Reagan from Mob Psycho. Anyway, not to say that he doesn't deserve it. I mean, if there's ever someone that deserves to be edgy, it's a Lich King like this guy. Overall, we see the form. It's interesting to see how he got eviscerated here. I like what's going on. He talks about the younger he gets, the more untamable it grows. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good metaphor for being a teenager. Yeah, like hormones are probably rushing into his brain for the first time in 100 years. He's really feeling like the springtime of youth again. It's what this really sounds to me is that adults have better impulse control compared to teenagers. In general, that's just how that kind of goes. Like right now, his frontal cortex, not only is it like forming, it's forming back badly. It's not fully developed. I think he's probably less than 25 right now. So he has to deal with that. Now, I do like this. I like that he's just completely thrown caution to the wind. Like he doesn't He doesn't have good judgment anymore. He's not caring about his body because like he knows he's gonna get it back. So why not go at like 120% potential? Now we see this giant plasma cannon, right? Dark Shadow gets eviscerated, but he's a Master Shadow, so that's all right. That's why this is okay to happen. And we do see that the boys get hit. Now again, this is where you gotta look at it and be like, yeah, beam. Like I recently changed my mind. I was once the kind of person that said that, yo, there's no way Sun Eater actually landed a direct hit on Shigaraki because like that would be too pathetic for this beam cannon to not work. And now seeing this, it's just like, yeah, no, like beam cannons just don't work in Hero Academia. Like, what is even going on here? Like, Hawks should not have any patch of clear skin. He should be burnt to a crisp if this is actually a beam cannon. And that's why, like, when you look at it, it's just like, yeah, no, beam cannons are just not that good in Hero Academia. Like, really, if you don't have, like, Endeavor God level flames, you really should just be punching everyone. Like, when he destroys his body to launch this attack at these two, he really should have just gone in for a punch. If he had punched them and destroyed his fist in doing so, like, Hero Academia is a physical meta. Like, it would have worked. Like, these guys' physical defense is not very good, but their beam weapon defense is clearly very high. These guys would do very well in Gundam, clearly. But not in Iron-Blooded Orphans. Iron-Blooded Orphans actually leans more towards the physical meta, so they would not survive that. But in other Gundam series, they'd probably survive, like, really well. I mean, like, bro, your clothing got destroyed by, like, your hands. Like, you know, they are lucky that All For One is a merciful god. That's really what it comes down to. Cool shot, though. Very cool shot. I think Horikoshi really liked that one, too. So, for this line, what he's really saying here is that the more I let the hormones take over and the angrier I get, the more of my, like, beast mode I can go into. Like, the quirk's latent potential is pretty much like, bruh, I'm just, like, going at 100% without any care for my body. Like, this is pretty much the equivalent of an adrenaline rush, right? When you get an adrenaline rush, man, it's like, you've heard the stories, like, a mother can lift a car off for baby, right? That's the adrenaline rush speaking rare. And then usually with an adrenaline rush, you do destroy your body because your muscles aren't used to it. So it's a perfect parallel. You can kind of really see it there. All right, so we move on. Youth is a wondrous thing. Great, great. We see that Kirishima and Shinzo were okay, and I think that's one of the few things that made me sad in the chapter. Is like, I don't think these guys actually got hit in whatever the black screen was. So I'm kind of sad that we didn't get to see Shinzo try to take control of All For One even for a few seconds. I think that would have been really cool. I think he kind of wasted his time because, like, being on Makia and Makia's not even under control. What's Shinzo even doing there? It just didn't seem worthwhile at that point. When you take away the fact that Makia wasn't under control, I think he should have tried to talk to All For One. All For One's very chatty, so he would have been able to get a good shot on him. Because, like, again, All For One's a great villain. He has his weaknesses, but at the end of the day, bro, when he gets mad, that's it. You can't really do anything. Like, bruh, him not being senile anymore, like, really made a difference. Anyway, we have this thing that happens. We have the black screen. Now, I personally don't enjoy this. I didn't enjoy it when, like, Meteo's thing got skipped. I really like seeing choreography. I think, like, for this screen, man, I don't know. Like, you could have done, like, law things. Like, you know, you could have shown characters being hit by, like, a giant beam or something. Or, like, another character just being gut punched pretty much. Like, oh, man, that would have been, like, badass. And you could have just... It didn't even have to be a lot. If you only want to keep it in one panel, just, like... do a bunch of, like, All For One just beating people up. Like, heck, man, get Mineta, like, a nice... Just give Mineta, like, a knee kick or something. Like, a gut kick with the knee. You know, just do that kind of stuff. I'm not a good artist. This is why I don't do manga. Yeah, no, I would have liked just a sequence of seeing, like, how we got to the next part. But it... You know, in other series, this kind of stuff would be okay. Because in another series, maybe... you would see All For One showing off this power later. Like, if you were hiding a power, that would be where I would say that that's a good idea. It's just unfortunate. Better clear that screen. It's unfortunate that we couldn't get to see it here. I'm gonna assume he just, like, beam cannoned everyone because that's all he's really showing off right now. Okay, so over here, we see that All For One's a jokester. He wants to take Tokoyami's quirk because, like, yeah, badass. Although I have to say that this is probably a misplay because, like, Dark Shadow's sentient. Dark Shadow's the last quirk I would want when I already have problems with controlling the roommates in my body. So I would not take Dark Shadow just because that seems like a really bad strategic decision. But All For One's also a teenager, so it makes sense that a teenager would want to take it, because like right now, All For One's edgelordness was threatened by Tokoyami, right? So that's why he wants to take it. It's because like he understands the value of that quirk. Now I do think it's funny that All For One does say he'll be taking the quirk and tells Hawks to get out of his way, while he's also holding Hawks in the air. Like there's no way for Hawks to get out of the way when he's holding him in the air. Like, but I think that's just All For One being a jokester. You know, like All For One doesn't say stupid things. He makes jokes. It's different. Anyway, we already talked about this page. I like that we got that little stab. Now, we get to a spot here where I'm just thinking like, man, Horikoshi, it kinda sucks. Pardon me. That you had to change the rules of Rewind. And like, you know, he can probably just say like, well, this is a different version of Rewind because of the doctor's tampering. But like, we know fundamentally, wow, that's a big line, that this isn't true. We know that damage pauses Rewind, because that's how Izuku survived it. That's actually a very critical component of Rewind. So it's unfortunate that we're at a point where it's been reversed and taking damage actually hastens the process. Like, can you imagine if this was Izuku and he was damaging himself as he's fighting overhaul? He would have been done within like 10 seconds, because he was damaging himself every single moment. So that's a little unfortunate that we kind of have to like do the complete opposite to make that power work, and to like add tension and to also justify why All For One's getting out of there. I personally, like, if we're gonna be doing this, I would have, instead of having to force us to infer that the doctor's tampering is what caused it, I would have played it straighter, like not. I think you could have done a different tension mechanism for this particular part. I don't think this is. I think this is a compromise and not really like a good move. I think like he needed this to work out this way because he needs to push the story in a particular direction. Now, over next to that, we do have a critical. Oops, sorry. Over next to that, we do get a critical moment here. Mineta screws up. He throws that little ball on the one spot that All For One can just rip off because it's clothing. Also, point to take into account. All For One was destroyed from the waist down, so he had time to go find a little dress and put it on. So good for him. I'm gonna hope that Mineta did something else here, that there's like a device attached to it, because that would be cool. I hope it's not really feudal. Like I've talked about this before, but I want everyone to get at least what Jiro got, and so Mineta, I really want him to get something big. Now, there's a lot of wonderful parts here. This is actually my favorite part of the chapter. I love this. I think it's great how Mineta tried to stop All For One from doing something. I like how he like sacrificed himself in a way, and what I really actually love is this spot right here. Don't take Dark Shadow from Tokoyami. Like, when I read this particular spot, and I think it might be influenced by the fan translation, what I'm seeing is specifically Mineta saying, don't take Tokoyami's friend from him. Using that kind of stuff like that, I think it really works. Like again, Dark Shadow is different from all the other quirks. Dark Shadow is Tokoyami's friend. So I really love that. I think that's the extra meaning that's in there. Let me just quickly check what the fan translation did for that one. Yeah, no, it was pretty much the same thing. So yeah, no, that's how I'm choosing to read that particular moment. I think Mineta didn't want Tokoyami's friend to be taken from him. Now, to Mineta's credit and to All For One's credit, like, All For One sees Mineta freaking out there, and he's thinking like, okay, the last time a weakling started yelling at me, I lost some time. I had a little headache. But right now, because shit sucks, because all this damage is like really like hastening the process, I gotta go. I'm not gonna waste time with him. So this man was clever, because he was pretty much thinking like, Mineta's gonna be able to somehow mess with me if I try to take Tokoyami. So this was just really good threat level management. He understood who the threats were here. Yes, he did leave behind Tokoyami, but like in the grand scheme of things, this is the better thing to do. Now over here we see a bunch of other people. You can make out this is Ray. I'm gonna assume that this is Koda, whatever her name is, or Yui, like Rule. I'm gonna assume it's Rule. I don't see Makia. I just don't understand who else who these other people are, man. Kind of just would have been cool to to get a better shot of them. Now here's another big one. You have this thing that your heroes couldn't protect a thing. Now you then go into this spot where it says, as the faction receiving refugees from UA, we were designated as a purely defensive force. However, the refugees have yet to arrive. And then you have Hawks going into still, and then you have there's still a glimmer of hope. Also, again, I think the fan translations did a better job on that whole thing. There's still hope. Like the way that they structured the there's still hope, just it was much better in execution on fan translation. Anyway, there's still a glimmer of hope. What I'm curious about is like, why do you bring that up after doing this flashback? Because like, if you were writing this in a novel format, there's an implication here. Because of the linking of these things, the implication is that the hope is going to come from the fact that the refugees have yet to arrive. And I went and I looked back at the Jump Giga Spring 2021 interview for Horikoshi. When asked which characters will have a very important role in the final act, he says the important ones will be, I guess revealing it would be a bit of a spoiler, let's just say Hawks and Ochako will have a surprisingly big role, becoming some kind of light of hope for you readers. Shoji will also keep doing his best. Shinzo and Monoma may also do some pretty big stuff. I'm planning an epic scene for Zero. Many characters' action will converge into a single one, so maybe, okay, we got that. Hawks being tied to hope here, I wonder what, like, you can only really have hope when everything's going to shit, so I guess this is the moment where, like, Hawks is holding the hope for the readers. I mean, I think that's the only thing that makes sense. Anyway, my camera's dying, so we gotta move fast. Okay, we go into the UA evacuation plot. So as we found out, this thing actually just stopped moving altogether. Now, I do see this here, and I kind of have to wonder if this is like a bomb. I don't know how they got, sorry, a bomb. I don't know how we got in here, but sure. Anyway, we see what's going on. We have Natsu's family. We see the kids from that one arc watching. Now, what I gotta say about this is that it's amazing. Have you guys ever been in a tunnel trying to use your phone? It's amazing that they get like quality signal reception so deep under the ground, so deep under so many layers of metal. That is insane. That is like Hero Academia, like upper tier technology. How are they still getting a Wi-Fi signal? That is insane to me. Anyway, really just shows you that Nezu makes peace on Earth. Like he makes a paradise. Just give him enough money. Anyway, the rest of this page, you know, has people talking about like, oh, bro, we put our faith in the heroes and look where that got us. Like, bro, come on. Like, they're fighting a cataclysm. Like, they're fighting All for One, the greatest villain of all time. Like, shove it. When we find out that only one of the pods has been stopped from the inside, someone's up to no good. We go into this page where we find some critical things, that being these guys are essentially a body that's had the head cut off because they're not getting orders from Skeptic anymore. Again, very lucky that Wi-Fi signals work so well inside of there. Anyway, we find this out. Now, this guy has some kind of electricity quirk. He gets caught out. Good on Gunhead for being able to find him. Also, like, good on them for having so many people they could put on defense. But this guy's doing this little signal. Now, we see a Bizd. And Bizd usually is the transmission of a signal with this electrical quirk. I have to assume that they somehow managed to rig bombs on the ceiling. Now, what I'm curious about is how did they rig those bombs on the ceiling, if this is actually what it is, but it has to be. How did they rig bombs on the ceiling when these pods, like, they get walls come up from below and they cover up? How did they get the bombs on the ceiling? How did they attach it? How did no one find out that they had bombs that had, like, radio receivers on them? Like, signal receivers? Like, come on, do some basic, like, metal scanning at the door. Like, how did you not find out these guys had bombs on them with wireless receivers? This is strange. Anyway, this portion is pretty rushed because, you know, you gotta kind of like look at the little sound effects to really figure out what's going on here. We have this moment where Death Arms comes back. He's finally a hero again, and he has a nice little thing about Izuku, and just think about, like, you know, how cool Izuku was, and he makes a reference to the whole my body moved without thinking. Anyway, when I look at this, like, honestly, it was a matter of time. You guys all know I was predicting it because this is what Hero Academia is. Like, he was going to come back. I don't think he is the glimmer of hope that Hawks is, like, potentially alluding to, but whatever. In the final page, we have Shoto and Ida. Now, I gotta say, I have to assume this is a flashback because we've seen this a lot of times. Like, we saw it with the spinner thing. I think we saw it going back to Makia. Like, yeah, well, I think this is back in time. We even have a little black screen here in Camino Ward. I'm gonna assume it's like back. This is in the past. Now, Stain is here. People are saying that Stain's gonna go there to kill Ida, and it's like, bro, like, that's stupid. If Stain actually does that, bro, like, that's a whole new level of stupidity. Like, bro, come on. No. He's gonna say something about how these guys are true heroes right now because, like, clearly they got filtered. These are the true heroes. Stain is wrong about a lot of things. He has a little like rider that people pointed out to me in the spoilers, like a little goblin, green goblin rider. I actually do think that I think Stain's probably gonna go with Ida and Shoto, and he's gonna be riding on this. He's gonna be keeping up with them. I think that's probably what's gonna happen. I don't think this is actually gonna go anywhere. I don't think Stain's gonna show up to go stab Ida. I think he's just gonna follow them, and it's just telling us that it's not over yet. It's like Stain's gonna cut All For One a little bit. Like he's 100% gonna go there and slash. Now you might be thinking like, okay, All For One just like zoomed away. What's going to happen next? I think the most obvious thing to happen is that this is happening in the past, and therefore, as All For One's trying to fly away, a giant wall of ice is gonna shoot up from the ground, and All For One's gonna smack it. You know why? Because that's just who All For One is, and that's what Todoroki just likes doing. I think that is like the most obvious thing, like most telegraphed thing we can possibly get here. And how does Todoroki get over there? Like Ida just like he has jet engines on his legs. Come on, like it's not rocket science. Like quite literally jet engines. The man can just take Shoto over there. I would assume. I would assume that's what's gonna happen. But yeah, no, I'm actually really expecting a heaven-piercing ice wall to show up in front of All For One's face, and then that way you have Shoto right next to the Dobby battlefield. So. Yeah, no, like, you know, if you're talking about there's still hope, that means that Shoto's going to answer that hope. And if there's still hope, like, I have to assume, like, when it comes to that, you know, thinking about the refugees has to be something to do with Eri. Like, Eri's going to get, like, one moment. Like, so far, her contribution to this has been helping the villains. So she's going to get a giant moment helping the heroes. That much is certain. Anyway, I have to go to work. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and till next time. I hope you have an absolutely great day. Kind of wish I could just kind of wish I could just like rant a little bit more. But yeah, no. Thanks for watching, guys, and till next time.